Good afternoon and welcome back to your Afternoon 5-State Farm Report. Danielle Drotzman, your host here for 570 WNAX. Thanks for tuning in here today and joining us on this Wednesday. Hope you guys are all having a great day so far. Well, kicking off your program here today, we are welcoming a special guest, Alexandra Dunn. She is the president and CEO of CropLife America. Alexandra, we're excited to get you on WNAX today. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
I am great, Danielle, and thank you for having me on WNAX. I am really excited to be here. I will tell you a little secret about South Dakota. It is one of two states left that I have to visit in the United States. So I am just going to have to come visit y'all sometime.
Yes, you will. Definitely have to put Mount Rushmore and the Badlands and some of those places on the to-do list, as it's kind of our touristy things. But yeah, it'd be South Dakota's a great state. Although I might be kind of biased, but
no, that's what I hear. So my husband and I keep talking about it. But we are, for those who don't know, of your listeners, CropLife America, we are a 95-year-old trade association. And we are advocacy-based, so, we're lobbyists essentially, and we work with the federal Congress here and also the administration, all the federal agencies, so the Department of Agriculture, the EPA, also now with Bobby Kennedy in his role, also a little bit more with Health and Human Services than we did in the past, the federal agencies, and we also work in the states with our state partners, the state ag groups and the farm bureaus and even specialty groups to really make sure that that growers and all and the public and also especially decision makers like legislators and policymakers understand pesticides. That's our group. We're really all about pesticides. Our companies that belong to our group are the manufacturers and innovators and discoverers of pesticides and also the distributors and formulators of pesticide products. So we are very proud to say that we help protect crops from weeds, pests, and disease so that we can have productive, abundant yield. But there's also a lot of misunderstanding about pesticides, and so that's what I get to do is try to answer a lot of questions about pesticides and help people that make policy decisions make good policy decisions so that farmers can have access to all the tools they need to protect their crops.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it's definitely I'm sure a very busy line of work as, pesticides are a very common thing that's used here, especially in the Midwest, being, we grow a lot of corn and beans and stuff. But, it's just important basically to practice proper stewardship around those pesticides like what you were talking about. And, Pollinator Week was at the end of June. So, and those are very, very important to agriculture too. So, in other words, it's just important to practice good stewardship.
Well, it really is. And that's what the Be Sure campaign is all about. It's a little bit of a play on words there with Be Sure. It's kind of like be sure as the user of the pesticide that you're following the instructions and following the label. But also, the play on words, of course, is, be sure that we are aware of those pollinators that we need to take care of and be aware of them where they are in the area and that we are taking the proper, as you said, stewardship steps to look out for them and make sure that we are, especially when using neonicotinoid products, putting the best practices in place to reduce any impacts on them that would affect their populations. There are a lot of stressors on that population of pollinators, and often surveys will come back and the public will say it's all because of pesticides, and the scientists tell us there are many things that are stressing pollinators. It's not all pesticides, but we certainly want to make sure that if we can bring down the percent of that pie, that's impacting them and bring down the percent of pesticides that are impacting them, that would be a really good thing. that's what the campaign is all about.
Gotcha. And yeah, I know like the reason to put pesticides on is just, to kind of control those unwanted insects. But, it's important to keep those pollinators because they are just so important to agriculture and food production. So I guess maybe who's kind of part of this campaign, or I guess any more you can tell us on just how important pollinators are.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, you're right. We know that American farmers are the stewards of the land and that their livelihoods depend on the productive land. So, the campaign is really for the farmers. It was created, however, and it's funded by a group called Growing Matters. And Growing Matters is a consortium of major companies in the ag industry that include BASF, Valent, Bayer, Gowan, PBI Gordon, Syngenta, and Mitsui Chemical Corporation and Life Solutions. So those companies came together and formed this consortium called Growing Matters. And through the consortium, they put together a lot of resources that are available to farmers that give them a lot of information that's easy to access and use, cutting-edge science and innovation that can help these growers protect their crops, both from the pests, weeds, and disease that you talked about, but also protect those pollinators at the same time. And our trade association that I work for, CropLife America, is a partner of Growing Matters. We have a few other partners that your listeners may be familiar with, the American Seed Trade Association, the Agricultural Retailers Association, so your local retailer maybe have some materials out on the Be Sure campaign, and then some state groups like the Florida Fruit and Vegetable Association, for example. I know you're in South Dakota, but a few states have started jumping on board as well. And so we're really proud to be part of the 2026 campaign and getting the word out, while we're in, the kind of early to mid part of the growing season.
Absolutely. And I guess what are just some reminders for farmers and applicators that they can follow for, I guess, when they're applicating like treated seed or just like foliar application?
Yes, absolutely. Well, for foliar application, we always say, remember that when you're using pesticides, the label is the law. So very carefully, read and follow the label directions. And for foliar application specifically, it's good to direct the spray away from a flowering plant and from a water body. Also to follow any buffer zones and to calibrate the equipment to minimize any drift. So that's really helpful. When it comes to treated seed, that's a really interesting and growing area where a lot of state regulators are putting more attention to treated seed. So again, reading the label is important, but also we've worked with the Seed Trade Association that I mentioned to put together a seed treatment guide that has a lot of information about how to handle seeds, particularly when you have extra seed. And you can find that at www.seed-treatment-guide.com. And within that document, it'll talk about, what do you do if you have a spill of seed? How do you clean it up properly? What's the right PPE to wear to protect yourself? How do you minimize dust off? How to dispose, again, of any packaging material? And then how to make sure you keep any treated seed out of the feed supply. I remember when I first was introduced to treated seeds, and I thought it was, so beautifully colored, it was, bright pink and turquoise, and I thought that was kind of fun. And of course, I quickly learned it's done intentionally to make sure that it didn't end up in the feed supply. Not many people are feeding their cows, neon green seed. So it's important that bright color is used, as a deterrent to keep that treated seed away from the feed supply.
Absolutely. Well, I guess kind of with that, sounds like you guys are busy, promoting proper usage of pesticides and treated seed and all that stuff. So I guess with that, anything to kind of wrap up with, or where can we go to learn more about the campaign or just learn more about CropLife America?
Yeah, well, certainly, to learn more, growers, everyone, we just, like I said, growers are stewards of the land, and they are always up on the issues. So certainly they can visit growingmatters.org/be sure and download a whole bunch of resources that have been developed to just probably look over and go, yep, I know all this, but a refresher, or if you've got some new staff working with you, it's a great thing to ask them to look at and just make sure that the people working your land are as responsible as you are. And then to learn more about CropLife America, if they're curious about our organization, they can visit croplifeamerica.org. But our goal, of course, is that the better pesticides and treated seed are handled out there on the land, the fewer restrictions growers will have put on them by regulators. And the more pesticides make it in the news that there are problems or people hear stories of misuse, then we end up with restrictions. And so we feel like education like this is really important because it leads to good use, and then we have hopefully, lots of options for growers and fewer restrictions.
Absolutely. All right. Did I miss anything?
I just want to thank your listeners for taking a listen to us, here in Washington, D.C. I will say, as someone who spends a lot of time going up to the Capitol, very few members of Congress today come from farm families, and so we do have a big educational opportunity for them. So we encourage your listeners to get involved, spread the word, and let people know how much they care about the land and how responsible they are. It's really important for them to be heard.
Absolutely. Very well said. All right. Again, that's Alexandra Dunn. She is the president and CEO of CropLife America. We will take a quick break here. We'll take a look at some ag weather, and then we will take a look at your markets here at the bottom of the hour with your commodity wrap. So stay tuned.